Everywhere on Earth has some kind of history and backstory associated with it, which is often hidden from immediate view and unknown to the majority of people. With a bit of digging, the truth can be uncovered. However, the reality of events that transpired in many places, and in some cases are still occurring, can often be unsettling to outsiders. Here are my choices for 5 of the most disturbing places on Earth. Number 5. The Cave of the Crystal Sepulchre. Only recently discovered in 1989, the Cave of the Crystal Sepulchre is a Mayan archaeological site located in Belize, which contains pottery, stoneware, and other valuable relics. However, the cave system holds a dark secret. Several skeletons were found littered across the cave floor, deep inside the labyrinth of chambers, and it's now widely believed that the skeletons found here belong to victims of ritual sacrifice. Disturbingly, several of the skeletons belong to small children, aged between 1 and 3 years old. Their tiny bodies stuffed inside tight crevices or just cast upon the rocky floor. Some of these young children even show signs of deformation, where the skull has been purposefully shaped to give it an elongated and almost alien-like appearance. Other skeletons are those of children in their teens and show signs of having been bound before death, while others belong to adults in their 30s and 40s. Analysis of the bones has shown that these unfortunate people suffered an extremely violent end, with many of the skulls showing signs of a massive blunt trauma injury, and some of the skulls also being entirely crushed, pointing to the likelihood that they were killed by being clubbed to death. Over the centuries, the bones have fused with the cave floor, and as such are left out in full view, rather than being removed and buried. One of the most famous skeletons inside the cave is that of a young person nicknamed the Crystal Maiden, whose bones have become so calcified that they now sparkle in the light, giving them the appearance of being covered in crystal. 2 of the vertebrae have been completely crushed, indicating that they too met a violent end before being thrown on the cave floor, where he or she has lain for somewhere in the region of 1,000 years. Dating the remains of the numerous sacrificial victims is difficult due to the calcification. However, the majority of the pottery at the site seems to have originated between 700 and 900 AD, and it's therefore assumed that it was during this period that the sacrifices were carried out. So what purpose could ending so many young lives in this brutal manner serve? The leading theory is that the people who were killed within the cave were sacrificed to the Mayan god of rain during an especially severe drought in a futile attempt to appease him. Although another theory is that the victims were believed to be witches, perhaps due to some kind of physical or mental disability, and were thus put to death inside the cave. The skeletons and pottery are not the only unique aspects of the caves, however. The cave itself seems to have been modified, either to create altars for offerings to the gods, or to create eerie silhouettes of faces and animals. These modifications, along with the skeletons and pottery, show that the site was of great importance to the Maya, who believe such deep cave systems to be portals to the underworld, but the exact events that transpired in the dark depths of the cave's chambers all those centuries ago remains unknown. Number 4. Chowchilla Cemetery in Peru. 19 miles south of the famous city of Nazca in Peru lies the Chowchilla Cemetery. This site was only rediscovered in the 1920s and is believed to have been used for burials between 200 AD and 800 AD. What makes this cemetery so eerie is that many of the mummified corpses are on open display and can be seen by visitors to the site squatting within the chambers where they were buried, their faces seemingly fixed in a permanent grin, many of them still clothed, and even with their original hair and much of their skin and soft tissue, despite being over 1,000 years old. The well-preserved mummies have been attributed to the extremely dry climate of the Peruvian desert, but the process by which the dead were mummified is also thought to have contributed to their excellent condition today. A corpse would first have its stomach, intestines, and internal organs removed, before being dried out and then wrapped in cotton, and then coated in a resin which kept out hungry insects, and greatly slowed down the rate at which bacteria decomposes flesh. Finally, they were laid to rest inside a tomb made from mud bricks, where many of them still sit today, in the same position they were placed in centuries ago, squatting in a fetal position and facing east, so that they can watch the rising sun each day. Unfortunately, the site was soon plagued by grave robbers, and as such, human bones and fragments of artifacts can be found scattered around the surrounding area, cast away like trash by the thieves who were searching for anything of value. Despite a major cleanup operation launched in 1997, where many of the remains were returned to the tombs, bones and skulls are still being found strewn across the sands. One of the more disturbing mysteries associated with the site is the supposed discovery of mummified heads, which were said to have contained holes drilled into the back of the skull, with some even containing rope threaded through the holes. The leading theory was that these heads may have been trophies, but this theory was cast into doubt when testing revealed that the heads actually came from the same gene pool as the rest of the mummies. Some point to the possibility that the holes were simply used to remove the brain during the mummification process, or are just a hoax, but the truth of the matter remains in question. Number 3. Akotasewa Market. The West African nation of Togo is home to the infamous Akotasewa Market. When you think of markets, vivid colours, an array of scents, and the hustle and bustle of traders haggling with customers over prices for locally made goods are all images that might spring to mind. The Akotasewa fetish market has none of this, and is instead the grisly sight of stall after stall loaded with decaying animal heads, body parts, and a huge number of other unusual items for sale. This disturbing market is a commercial hub for practitioners of voodoo and all those who wish to receive its supposed benefits, acting as something of a one-stop pharmacy where fetishes, charms, ingredients for potions, and anything else that might be needed in a ritual can be acquired for the right price. The stench of decay hangs in the air, and swarms of flies hover over the decaying animal parts. Despite the market's ability to shock outsiders, and contrary to the popular belief that voodoo is some kind of evil magic, it's actually a religion whose origins can be found in West Africa. All creation is considered divine, and therefore contains divine power. Because of this, medicines which can be used for medical cures, to protect yourself from evil, and for other beneficial purposes, can be created using various animal body parts and plants. The market's full of talismans and lucky charms, which are known as fetishes, which are everything from doll-like statues to dried animal skulls, and there are even rumours that human remains can also be purchased in the darker corners of the market. These fetishes are transformed by the priests into items believed to be imbued with great power, which can ensure good luck for their owner, cure illness, and even remove curses. The priests are chosen at birth by one of the multitude of gods in the voodoo religion. Each god will select a priest to act as his conduit, communicating with him through dreams and various other channels, and during a consultation with the priest, customers will reveal their problems, which the priest will then discuss with the gods, eventually arriving at a course of action you must follow to cure whatever ails you. For medicines, herbs and dried animal remains will be ground together before being rubbed into 3 cuts on your chest or back, but wooden dolls or animal skulls will often suffice. The priests claim that anyone and everyone can be helped, with no problem too severe to be solved, for a price of course. Prices are not listed, and the fee required is negotiated with the god. However, as with most markets, if the initial price is too much, it's possible to keep asking until a more favourable fee is agreed upon. Despite the shocking contents of the market, priests assure visitors that animals cannot be killed simply to be sold, and instead only animals who are found dead should be used. But with such huge amounts of money involved in the trade, many remain skeptical about this claim, and with rarer and therefore more powerful ingredients proving enormously profitable, the trade in endangered species is likely to continue. Disturbingly, there have even been increasing numbers of reports of human bodies being found with all internal organs removed, as well as albinos being hunted and killed for their body parts, which have become highly prized items. Number 2. Chuk Lagoon. Located just off the Micronesian coast, the serene blue waters of Chuk Lagoon mask a grim secret, as its seabed is home to one of the largest ship graveyards in the world. The tropical waters and palm tree-laden islands might seem like paradise, but the area was once the site of a destructive and bloody battle. With the Second World War raging, the Japanese Navy chose the sheltered lagoon as one of its major headquarters in the Pacific, but with the United States on the offensive, the war made its way to the lagoon when in February 1944, American forces launched an attack on the Imperial Japanese Army called Operation Hailstone. The battle lasted for 2 days, during which US forces sank over 60 Japanese ships and destroyed 270 aircraft. The battle was fierce and brutal, and very few of the men aboard the sunken ships would make it out alive. Hundreds of souls were sent to the bottom of the lagoon, trapped inside the boats in which they used to live and work, drowning in the pristine waters of the lagoon, where their corpses remain to this day. Chuk Lagoon is now a chilling reminder of the horrors of war, and the area is now littered with the rusting wrecks of ships, tanks, planes, artillery pieces, and human remains, laid to rest in the same spot where they fell, untouched by the outside world for over 70 years. The lagoon is surrounded by coral, which provides the area with protection from the strong ocean currents, resulting in the wrecks remaining remarkably well preserved. And as such, the site has become popular with divers, who are greeted with the eerie sight of rusting but recognisable tools of war, including ammunition and bombs, as well as more everyday items such as plates, shoes, and sake bottles. Divers will also frequently encounter the grisly sight of the remains of those who were killed here. Groups of human skulls lay in open view, and even more corpses are trapped inside the holds of the rusting ships. The site is intended to be preserved as a monument to the tragedy of war, but the wrecks pose another potential danger, as millions of gallons of crude oil are held within the rusting ships and could spill out at a moment's notice. Perhaps in one last act of destruction, the battle that began here over 70 years ago might one day finally lay waste to the lagoon and its surrounding coral reef. Number 1. The Sanctuary of Tophet. Discovered in 1921, the Sanctuary of Tophet seems to have provided hard evidence of child sacrifice taking place on a massive scale in ancient Carthage. Over 20,000 urns were unearthed during the excavation of the site, and archaeologists were shocked by what they found inside. The charred remains of animals and small children, many under 4 years of age, were packed within the urns, which were buried under tombstones inscribed with messages of thanks to the gods. The site in Tunisia in North Africa contains an altar enclosed within a cave, alongside the horrific burial ground. It's thought that small children and even babies would be roasted to death on a heated bronze statue, or simply cast into a pit of fire while still alive. One ancient account speaks of children being placed into the hands of a giant statue of a god before being rolled down into a large pit filled with intense flames. The general consensus is that this sacrifice was not only carried out in anticipation of future blessings, but also in payment for favours already granted by the gods. Parents would offer up their own children in the hope of receiving a blessing, and according to some scholars, parents might even pledge to kill the next child they bore, if only the gods might grant their wish. For example, ensuring the safe arrival of a shipment of goods from a foreign port, or blessing a planned business venture. Yet other scholars dispute the child sacrifice theory, pointing to many of the sources being of Roman origin, and therefore nothing more than propaganda against the Carthaginians and a case of history being written by the victors in an effort to make the Carthaginians seem cruel and uncivilized. Yet evidence found at the sanctuary seems to overwhelmingly prove that child sacrifice was very much real. While the alternative theory is that the cremated remains may belong to children who died of natural causes, the very fact that animal remains have also been found inside the urns indicates that the site is not simply a burial ground for children who died prematurely. After all, why would you cremate animals and bury them in a children's graveyard? This presence of charred animal remains probably points to animals being used as substitutes for child sacrifices in certain situations, with those parents too poor to afford an animal substitute forced to offer up their child. Inscriptions on the stone further back up this theory, with the phrase, "The gods heard my voice and blessed me," appearing on several headstones, and it seems unlikely that so many young children just so happened to die of natural causes right at the time when favours from the gods were so desperately needed. The majority of the urns are dated between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC, which was a period when Carthage was engulfed in war and rebellion, and its people would have been looking to their gods for help. Further accounts of this shocking practice are also found in the Bible, where it's mentioned that the Carthaginians sacrificed children to their god at an area known simply as the roasting place, and even the name Tophet is Hebrew for place of burning. So those are my choices for 5 of the most disturbing places on Earth. Let me know in the comments which other locations you would have included in the list, and I'll see you again on the next video.